What is up, guys? It's Mekabre. We're back with yet another Destiny 2 video, and in today's video, we need to talk, okay? We need to sit down and discuss the meta in Destiny 2's Crucible. I know, I know. It's a touchy subject for a lot of people, and here's why. Right now, a lot of people would argue the meta, what weapons are good in the Crucible right now, is more free than ever. You can go in to Gambit. You can go into Trials on wins or on weeks where it's 3-win hand cannon. You can go into Iron Banner, turn in a bunch of tokens, and walk away with more than likely what is a god roll. And for those of you out there that don't have a god roll steady hand, I am sorry, and I feel your pain because my luck is very similar to that. We'll discuss the meta of Destiny 2 in the Crucible right now, excluding special weapons, and I'll explain why. And we're going to discuss some things that I think either work even though they are off meta, or maybe don't work even though they're off meta. Before we jump into that, guys, I wanted to give a reminder, and this is the first video of the month of April. At the time you guys are watching this, possibly it's April 3rd. So I hope you guys had a good March. And, for those of you that are still in school, you're almost there. You're almost done. Keep it up. You're almost out. But we do have a goal. If we can reach 50 subs by the end of April, okay? If we can reach 50 subs by the end of April, I have a surprise for you. I'm just going to straight up tell you what that surprise is. I'll be changing my stream structure just a little bit. First things first, we're going to stop streaming on YouTube unless you guys are absolutely dying to have me stream on YouTube. Second thing, instead of YouTube, we will now be on Twitch. We'll go and transfer over to Twitch. I already have a channel and everything set up. I just haven't taken the time to test anything out yet. So we will be switching to Twitch. The third thing, I'll be updating it, and I actually might go out and get a face cam. So keep that in mind. You'll actually be able to see who the heck I am. I'll be able to interact with you guys a little bit more. Chat, I feel like it'll be a little more, not necessarily popular, but kind of bumping, We'll have more energy in chat, hopefully. So that's what's happening. I hope you guys can reach that goal. I would thoroughly enjoy it if you guys can. And with that, let's jump back into the meta of Destiny 2's Crucible. Now, guys, I would like to say that I enjoy this meta very, very much. 120s, they're great. I do. I actually do like the hand cannons. Some of my favorite hand cannons, for example, Bottom Dollar and the Trials one, came this season and are extremely good. But are they too easy? Are they just that weapon that anybody can pretty much pick up and walk away with a game where they drop 15 plus kills really from doing nothing? And my answer to that is yes, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind. 120s need to be nerfed. But are we in a meta right now? And I've talked about this in previous videos, even previous podcasts, where are we in a meta right now where you can get away with using other weapons? And my answer is yes and no. And what do I mean by yes and no? Well, I mean there's some weapons that yes, you can absolutely get away with using because 120s are weak in this aspect, or because if you play in a certain manner, this weapon is just more busted than 120s, whatever the case may be. But in order to establish which weapons are busted against 120s, in order to establish why 120s are meta or what else is meta besides 120s, I think we need to decide what is the meta and move past that. And like I had said earlier, I'm not going to be including special weapons, and the reason for that is because special weapons, in my opinion, have been the meta for longer than primary weapons have been. Using a sniper, you can one-shot anybody across any length of distance, right? They could be point blank, you no-scope them. They could be a long ways away, and you can still headshot them. They're dead. A shotgun, I think, are just way too free. a lot of these guns don't have a fast enough TTK with a Titan slide, a Warlock Icarus dash, you're crouched behind a wall, whatever the case may be. Shotguns one shot you from a decent range. Fusion rifles with a recent buff, same thing there. All of these weapons, special weapons specifically, are really good. And I think all of them would be encompassed in this meta if we were to add them to the list. So therefore, I'm taking them off of the list, and we are going to focus solely on primary weapons. Let's jump in with the meta weapons. So the first and easiest one is 120s. Now, past 120s, though, you might be saying, okay, well, what else would you really argue is meta? Well, I think 140 hand cannons are still meta. I sat down and played approximately 10 to 12 games the other day, and I just wanted to use those as a baseline. I kind of recorded, what were people using in each game, who was the top fragger, were their kills consistent, and each game was a new lobby, so it was never playing with the same people. Now, some of the background gameplay is me later on using weapons that I consider to be slightly off meta, or maybe just that mid meta, and some of those lobbies were the exact same over and over. Now, what else besides 120s? Well, like I said, 140s I think are somewhat meta. And here's why. They're not in that mid meta because a lot of their perks are still amazing. The only reason 120s outclass them is because 120s have A, more range, and B, with a damage perk, can 2-tap. That's it. Literally the only other reason. Now, what else besides 120s, 140s? What else is just so god tier? Well, in the matches that I was playing, I found actually two pulse rifles. And it's funny because they weren't the same pulse rifle. They weren't the same archetype of pulse rifle. No, they were the exact opposite, matter of fact. We have the high impact frame messenger, and then I had a lot of rapid fire frames the time were inspired. And both of these weapons perform phenomenally. I think, without exception, these weapons are in the meta. Now, what other weapon, if there is another weapon, should be included on this list? And I have only one other. That other weapon, that singular weapon, is a scout rifle, and it's going to be the only scout rifle that's even remotely good at this point, in my mind. And I'll explain why. And I have other scout rifles on this list, do not worry. But Dead Man's Tail. It's just such a good weapon. Being able to deal 120 damage but firing at a faster rate is incredible. On top of that, the range it has is even better than the 120 hand cannons. So, there you have it. Those are what I consider to be the meta weapons as of the current season. What are some mid-meta weapons? These are the weapons that don't quite make the cutoff. In the hands of the right people, you see them performing really, really well. And the hands of some people that are a little bit on the clueless side, they don't perform well at all, and therefore don't catch a whole lot of, popularity. So, what are some things that I'm talking about? Well, let's start with a class that I know a lot of you guys enjoy, SMGs. SMGs, while are the PvE preferred choice of weapon, we have several that people actually end up using in the Crucible. And I saw a lot more of these last week with Iron Banner, but things like the Extraordinary Rendition, Ikelos, maybe perhaps you have a good multi-max CCX, or perhaps you have a good friction fire. All of these weapons are solid choices, but it really depends on how you play and how well you know the weapon you're using. Past that, I also saw quite a few sidearm users, specifically two sidearms in more than others, I would argue. The first one is Lonesome, and the second one actually was the Keeney, a brand new sidearm. Both of these sidearms actually perform very, very well, and I have a Keeney that I've been using a little bit and enjoy it quite a bit. Um, the thing is sidearms and SMGs both lack range, and that is made up if they're rocking a 120 or perhaps a sniper. So while these weapons are good, they can't compete with a lot of other things. Now, what else is that mid-meta mark? Well, I feel like this is where you would put your other hand cannons. If 140s aren't deemed meta, this is where they belong. Additionally, I think 180s, depending on how well you're aiming, and the perks you have on them can easily be an excellent choice, so therefore I would put them here as well. On top of this, while bows are not all that great by themselves often, if you pair them with a hand cannon perhaps or another weapon, I think bows are an excellent choice, and I am going to put them in this category as well. That leaves very few archetypes of weapons or weapons in general that are left to be covered, so let's get into it. In the off meta, quote unquote, off meta weapons, I am putting almost all scout rifles. There are very few exceptions here, but they're going in this category. I'm also putting all the auto rifles, and I'll explain why in a second. Additionally, I'm putting in the adaptive frame pulse rifles, and past that, any other primary weapons that I may or may not have forgotten about. All of those weapons belong in the off meta. Now, why, you may ask, for a lot of these, what, why are you putting them in this category or that category? Like I said, I recorded, this is just a base recording from those 10 games that I played originally, and this is what I have come to find. So, what are those weapons? Well, or why are auto rifles in there? Because that's one thing I have yet to explain. Well, auto rifles in general took a huge nerf, and a lot of them underperform even in PvE. With looking for a buff here in the near future, there's a good likelihood that they could easily move up to meta once again, and if not meta, they could be in that mid meta range. Now, disclaimer here. There are going to be people out there, and maybe there'll be people in my comment section, who knows, that say, hey, you're incorrect, this weapon is actually meta, and here's why. And then they'll be like, I have over 25,000 kills on it. Cool. You might be the only person, or you might be one of two, one of 100 even, it's still a small amount. Just because you are absolutely cracked with the weapon doesn't mean it is meta. I hate to break it to you, I can shut down a lot of lobbies with symmetry, even when they're using 120s. Is symmetry broken? No. Is symmetry actually meta? No. It's just one of my favorite loadouts, and I've used it enough that I know it very, very well. So, for those of you who think that this adaptive frame pulse rifle is going to be god tier and you're going to absolutely destroy everyone, wow, cool. You might be able to. I don't know if everyone can, though. So, let's jump into the reason you guys are all here. Can you get away with using off meta weapons or mid meta weapons and work against 120s? Is there anything that works the best? Is there anything that's just okay? Well, here's the thing, 120s are extremely dominant right now, and it's honestly difficult to say that there is a weapon that can always compete against a 120. I find that even some of the best players using their best loadouts that aren't 120s can't keep up with 120s. 120s just have too many perks and too many advantages on their side at this point in time, as of April 3rd, 2021, in order to be like, yes, I can use whatever I want and get away with it. Now, I fully believe that you can use whatever you would like in quick play and get away with it. And I honestly do. Like I said, I don't think symmetry's broken. I don't think it really can compete with a lot of 120s, but I make it work. Now, when I go into trials, I do not rock symmetry. Never. Mm-mm. I rock a 120 hand cannon or my high impact Desperado Zen moment messenger. So, in short, I think that the meta is very dominant and that it's difficult to find a weapon that can combat it. Now, can you use off meta weapons and still succeed? Most definitely. As you can see in some of the background gameplay, some of these off meta weapons or mid meta weapons that I may be using, I do okay with, but I also get bodied by a lot of hand cannons or snipers or shotguns. And like I said, it's depending on how well you know the weapon that you're playing with. Now, are there certain weapons that I think easily could switch and become meta if they got this perk or if this buff was given to them? Most definitely. I think scout rifles are right on the edge of becoming quite meta, just seeing as how their range is their biggest play to, and there's a lot of them that can roll with kill clip or roll with a damage perk. And like the new scout rifle Eternal Blazon, if you get kill clip, it is a solid choice. But can it always compete with 120s? No, and that's the problem. If we get a new meta in this upcoming season, season 14, which I would be shocked if we did, but if we do, I think it's likely that it'll become even more balanced than what it already is. I think 120s are broken, and I think they're the easy cutout. I'm gonna just use a weapon to get a lot of kills this game. But I think this season has allowed us to kind of mess around and use whatever we like the most of any of the previous seasons thus far. So I have nothing else to say except for maybe go into Crucible, test out some random weapon that you don't think would be very good, and maybe you'll like it. Maybe you'll end up maining that weapon. I don't know what. And honestly, the more I try this, the more I find weapons that I am absolutely in love with. So that is it for this video. Remember the sub goal. Leave a like, comment down below. Tell me if you enjoyed this meta, if you have a good 120, or maybe if you want a new meta and what that meta would be. With that, I have nothing else to say except for get back to grinding, you crazy guardians.